next presenter, funnily enough, is actually me. So I think I have a little bit of an introduction in the video, so I'll leave it to the video version of me to introduce myself. And welcome to ChatGPT and Excel.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Introduction to ChatGPT and Excel for Excel Virtually Global 2023. My name's MYLES. I'll be your presenter. I did a Bachelor's of Science with a major in Physics at UNSW, and I now work as an analyst for some product where we specialize in financial modeling in Excel and Power BI. So just some admin stuff. This is a pre-recorded presentation. However, I will be down in the comments in real time. If you have any questions at the end of the presentation, we'll have a small period for asking me questions about it. So let's get started. I wanted to start off by looking at what ChatGPT actually is, because obviously everyone's very excited about it. Everyone knows about it, but a lot of people don't actually understand what it is and how it works. And that really impedes a lot of people's ability to use it to its full effectiveness. So ChatGPT stands for Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And if that doesn't mean much to you, that's all right. That doesn't mean much to most of us. So it is a form of artificial intelligence called a large language model. There are different types of artificial intelligences. Large language models specifically work by taking in huge amounts of text and language data, and then building a predictive model based on that to try and estimate what should follow a previous piece of text. So there are different models to ChatGPT. There's 3.5, there's 4, and there's a few others, like more specific versions of them, and all of them are better at different things. So for 3.5 and 4, those are the main two for now that we'll be focusing on. 3.5 is what's available for the free version, while 4 is available with the paid version. We'll be going more into like the details of the differences there and which one you need in a bit. ChatGPT isn't the only prominent LLM though, LLM being large language model. Other examples include Google's Bard, Microsoft Copilot, and Microsoft's Bing Chat. Now, much of what will be discussed in this course actually does apply to other LLMs, as many of the same principles apply between them. So how does it work? At its core, an LLM is just making predictions on what should come next. And that's really important to understand because there's no underlying understanding of the question that you're asking it. There's no actual critical thinking, thought process, thinking through what is being said. It is an entirely computational and probabilistic response. And that is actually at the root of a lot of the troubles that people have with LLMs, is not understanding that fact, that it is just coming up with its best estimate of what it thinks should go after the bit of text that you've sent in. Now, it is trained on a huge amount of data, which are just mainly examples of human language. And so for most pieces of text that come up, it has a fairly good response as it has seen previous data and it knows how to respond to that. The example on the right of the screen is an example of kind of how it would be trained. It would be given a sentence such as Hannah is a blank, and it needs to fill in the word that it thinks it is. And it would be trained on millions and millions and millions of examples of that, consistently trying to improve its model to be more accurate. But at the end, what it is just an estimate, right? Hannah could be replaced by a sister, could be replaced by a friend, could be marketer. And what that means is that when it's generating responses, it's not like a traditional computer where there's going to be a set outcome of if you put 10 plus 10 in a computer, it's always going to equal 20. Instead, it's usually going to equal 20. Sometimes it might equal 21. Sometimes might equal 19. Now, for that specific example, it will probably always equal 20. But for more complicated examples, that's where the probabilisticness does become an issue and does make things a little bit messier sometimes. But we'll get into that in a moment. Let's have a look at getting started. So we want to hop on over to chat.openai.com. And here's our basic home screen here. So we've got on the left, we've got new chat, which allows us to open up new chat box along with all of our previous chats here if we want to go back and restart a conversation or check through a conversation. Down in the bottom left, we've got some of our details. We've got our account details, our plan, our any custom instructions that we want to create to make it respond to us in a certain way. And we got the settings in beta. And just quickly, if you're going to be following along and using the paid version to follow along, you want to come in here and have all of these ticked, as we will be using all three of these later on in the presentation. Finally, we've got up here, we've got the version. Now, if you've only got the free version, you'll only be able to use 3.5. I'll be using 4 today for reasons I'll explain later, but you'll be able to follow along with most of the things for 3.5. Now, you can hover over that and go down and select any of the extra bonus features if you'd like. Finally, we've just got the chat box where you can ask it a prompt. So you can go, hello, what is the capital of Australia? And it will respond to us as we'd expect. Okay. Now, let's have a look at the different options. So there's 3 core different options for ChatGPT. There's the paid version, the free version, and the enterprise version. So the free version is the most basic. It gets you the weakest model in ChatGPT 3.5 and gives you no extra bonus features. A lot of people will get a lot of utility out of the free version, and so if you're not in a role that requires something specific from the paid version that you're looking for, then you'll probably get plenty out of the free version. And there are alternatives such as using Bing Chat or using Bard that allow you to get around some of the more complicated things that you might want to do. But the paid version does just give higher quality answers, though, unfortunately, because it is a better model. And that's why I'm going to be using the paid version today, because it means that I can actually rely on more consistent answers out of it versus if I'm using 3.5, they can be a bit more all over the place. Additionally, the paid version allows access to all of the bonus plugins and features such as the advanced data analysis and browse with Bing, which really do add a lot to the experience if you're using it to a higher capacity. Finally, we've got the enterprise version, and the enterprise version is just the paid version, but with higher levels of security. So the enterprise version is SOC 2 compliant, which is a level of compliance that's given to software such as Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud and Amazon AWS. And what that just means is that if you're using secure data with the enterprise version of ChatGPT, you can be more confident that that data is safe and secure versus with the normal paid or free version. Now, I want to start off by going over some of the issues that surround using ChatGPT and some of the pitfalls that we need to be wary of. And the first one is the one that most of you are probably aware of, which is ChatGPT is unreliable. ChatGPT is only ever giving its best estimate of the answer that you are looking for. And sometimes if the question is fairly straightforward, if it's something that it's seen before or something that it's good at, then it'll give a quite good answer. If you ask it what the capital of Australia is, that's a fairly straightforward answer, and it'll be able to provide you a good answer there. But sometimes it either doesn't understand the question properly or doesn't have the appropriate information in its memory. And sometimes there is just an element of error in there with anything probabilistic in this way. Its estimate will just be off. And the biggest issue, sometimes it will even just make things up or hallucinate. So there is an example earlier in the year, a lawyer in the US was actually disbarred because he showed up to court and he cited a whole heap of case law that it turned out was all just completely fabricated. Why? Because he had researched using ChatGPT. And so that leads to one of the biggest takeaways that we need from today is you should always be checking your answer with ChatGPT. Anything that comes out of it, you should always double check, triple check, and make sure that it's actually accurate. Because while it is good, while it is very solid and very reliable 85% of the time, there are always those edge cases where it will either make something up or just will be a bit inaccurate or just won't provide the answer that you're looking for. So you should always make sure to check whatever is coming out of ChatGPT. Issue number 2, ChatGPT is bad at math and other things. So people assume that ChatGPT should be good at maths because it is a computer. Unfortunately, it's not built to do maths. It's kind of like assuming that an English professor would be able to do physics questions because they both work at a university. It's built on language data. And it's providing a best estimate. So when you're asking it, what is 5 plus 10? It's not calculating it like a traditional calculator would. Instead, it's thinking about the language data that it's being fed in the past and looking at 5 plus 10. Have I seen 5 plus 10 in the past? Have I seen anything similar to 5 plus 10 in the past? 4 plus 10, 3 plus 10. And then it's providing its best estimate based on that. Now, for 5 plus 10, that's actually fairly straightforward. It's probably seen things like that in the past. However, when you get to more complicated questions, it starts to break down a little bit. And so I'll show you an example. Let's jump over to ChatGPT quickly. I'm going to try what is 123 to the power of 4.5? This for a calculator would be a fairly straightforward question. However, so ChatGPT comes up with 284,636. Okay, what is 123 to the power of 4.5? Wow, okay, so that's 2538475,647. So that is off, not even just by a little bit, that's off by multiple magnitudes. And unfortunately, that's what happens when you get very complicated maths. And you get a similar thing actually with other areas such as coding, where there's ChatGPT will provide its best estimate of what code you're looking for based on the language data, and sometimes that's quite helpful and sometimes it's good, but it doesn't actually have an underlying understanding of how the code works, so it might miss out on important bits of syntax or important coding rules that it doesn't understand. So that's just the next thing to be wary of. And there are plugins and ways to get around it. So there is, for example, a Wolfram plugin that allows it access to a math database that makes it more stronger. But just with the base models, it's something just to be aware of and conscious of. Issue 3, ChatGPT doesn't know what it's doing. Related to issue 2, ChatGPT has no underlying understanding of what it's actually doing, which makes it a poor problem solver and decision maker. When we're trying to think our way through problems, we are taking all of the information and we're actually trying to calculate the solution based on that. ChatGPT isn't doing that. It's just giving a best estimate of what it thinks you want as an answer based on what it's seen previously. So if it's seen similar problems previously, oftentimes it's quite accurate because it knows this is what people have said as an answer to this problem in the past. So this is the answer that I'm going to give you. But it means that it's very poor at actually synthesizing new information and also using current information to solve new problems. So it's kind of like giving a really smart kid a formula sheet and trying to make him do a maths test. Some of the really simple questions he's going to be able to get because he's going to look at the formula sheet, he's going to be able to apply it very straightforward. But any more complicated questions that require a more nuanced understanding of the topic, he's going to struggle to apply those formulas over to. ChatGPT has all of the information, but doesn't have any of that processing ability to be able to apply that information in new ways. It also can't read into any form of context or make any form of common sense decision, which are obviously very human ideas, context and common sense decisions, that is. So I've talked quite negatively about ChatGPT so far. So what is it actually good for? So firstly, it's great at comprehending and analyzing textual information. If you feed it a bunch of text, it will be able to go through and it will be able to pull out the important insights from that text. It's also great at generating content and mimicking communication styles, especially for very straightforward and simple purposes. So the comprehending and analyzing textual information, that's the input side of things. Generating content is the output side of things. I'm sure plenty of you have seen examples of ChatGPT writing songs in the style of Taylor Swift and Michael Jackson. That's a perfect example. People with very distinct communication styles, it finds it very straightforward to copy. But you can even do that with yourself. If you write reports, for example, you can feed it your example reports and then ask it to write more reports in the style of your example reports. Now, explaining complex issues in understandable ways. ChatGPT, this is one of the things it's great at. It is great at simplifying down really complicated issues and giving it in a way that makes it much easier to understand as a reader. And the thing is, it can adjust the way it explains it depending on who the audience is. You can say, explain this to me like I'm 10 years old, or explain this to me like I'm a university student. Explain this to me like I'm marketing executive, or explain this to me like I'm an investor. And it can explain it in different ways. You can also even query it further. You can say, oh, elaborate on this part, elaborate on this part. And it's fantastic at that and has all the patience and time in the world to do that. Finally, assisting in making suggestions for more complicated tasks. I did mention that ChatGPT does struggle with problem solving and does struggle with more complicated tasks earlier. However, what it is really good for is providing suggestions for that, bouncing ideas off you. It's great as a sort of research assistant where it's not perfect in that regard, but it can provide you with ideas for how to progress. I'm not a fantastic coder. ChatGPT is an all right coder, but it's also not entirely reliable. But together, we can bounce ideas. Well, I can bounce ideas off it, and between my skills and its skills, we can often come up with something that is much better than anything I could write by myself. So let's talk about how to get the best out of ChatGPT with prompt engineering. The most important thing, and this whole slide, is providing detail and context. AI doesn't have any common sense. It can't read between the lines. It will just take your words at face value. So you need to be descriptive with what you want from it. Don't say, write me code to import a spreadsheet into Python. Say, write me code to import an Excel spreadsheet titled customerdata.xls into Python. There's one sheet and the first row of columns is a header row. It's small things like that, but just providing all that extra context will tell it exactly what you want. And that's the same for any sort of prompt that you're asking it. Provide detail and provide context. Okay, the next important thing is breaking things down into multiple steps. This is called chain of thought processing, and this has been shown in studies to be the most effective form of querying for ChatGPT, and has been shown to be significantly more effective than just one-step processes. There's two reasons why why chain of thought processing is so important. So the first is that breaking it down into multiple steps makes the AI just generally less likely to make mistakes, because it makes it turns the problems into smaller, simpler problems for it. And obviously, if the problems are easier, it's less likely to make a mistake on any of them versus just trying to solve it all in one go. The second step, which is a bit less the second reason, which is a bit less intuitive, is because breaking it down to multiple steps, and especially if you get it to then explain its reasoning, forces it to actually think somewhat like a human. So you can actually force the AI to walk through its processes, and because of the way its answers are generated, it will somewhat mimic human thought. Versus if you just get it to generate an answer just normally with no walking through, it'll just generate the best answer that it can without taking the thought processing steps that we're forcing it to make. Finally, when it does actually make mistakes, they are just easier to isolate. So if you're going through and you're trying to figure out where it went wrong, if you're trying to improve it, you can go through step by step and say, this is the step that it went wrong. Either ask it to improve it or just fix it yourself. The next tip I've got is role play, from who to who. So having ChatGPT assume a role is extraordinarily helpful. You can have it say, oh, explain me this like you are a professor, explain me this like you are a marketer. And that will significantly change how it explains something or how it presents something. On the other hand, you can change who the target audience is. You can say, write a report for this aimed at teenagers, or write a report for this aimed at investors, and that'll also change the outcome. This is related to the first prompt, where it's just about providing detail that allows it to come up with just better and higher quality answers with that detail, as opposed to vague general answers. The next tip is zero shot versus multiple shot prompting. This is a powerful idea that a lot of people don't actually explore, is providing it examples of how you want your answer structured. So for example, if you want an it to write an email for you or write a report for you. Let's say you wanted to write a report for you. If you would just ask it, write a report for me on X, Y, and Z, it'll write a report, but it will be fairly generic and vague and probably not that helpful. Meanwhile, if I provide it 3 examples of previous reports that I've written, then I can ask it, write a report on X, Y, and Z, and it can do that mimicking the style of how I do it. And again, just provides it more to actually build upon. This is called multiple shot prompting because you're giving it multiple examples of what you want from it beforehand. Finally, and this is another very important tip, have multiple goes. Don't be afraid to ask the same question multiple times. Sometimes ChatGPT gets stuff wrong. Sometimes it doesn't give you the answer that you want. But because it is just all providing an estimate, if you ask it a second time, it might come up with a different answer. This is especially relevant in things like coding, for example, or like if you wanted to generate any sort of content and you're not happy with the first draft, get it to just completely rewrite it. It doesn't take any extra time. But additionally, you should be using those mistakes to tweak the wording of your prompts and try and figure out, oh, where did it go wrong? Why has it not given me the answer that I want? And change the wording of your prompts based on that. Finally, you can get it to build upon or elaborate on its previous answers. Because while sometimes it may get things wrong, oftentimes it's gone in the right direction. Oftentimes it's got the right idea. You can say, hey, this part of your answer, how about you build on that, or you elaborate on that, or you go in that direction and just fix this other part. Okay, now we're going to start off with uses for the base version. I've talked a lot about just general general ChatGPT tips right now. So now we're going to look at it more from an Excel perspective, and we're going to look at ways you can use the free version, ChatGPT 3.5. The first and most obvious way is finding the right function. If you've got an Excel problem, you can just ask ChatGPT to try and solve your Excel problem. Now, it won't always be the most efficient or best solution. Sometimes it'll even be wrong, but it can be helpful anyway. You can just ask it multiple times if you want to try and improve the solution. And even if it is wrong, sometimes it might suggest a function that you hadn't thought about, or sometimes it might go in a direction that you hadn't thought about going in. It just got the function wrong, and you know, oh, that's a good idea. Let me do this now that way. So for example, I gave it the following prompt. I'll pull up an Excel file quickly. I have this Excel file, date extraction, where I have a series of sentences and each one has a date in it. And I want to try and pull that date out with an Excel function in there. Okay, I'm jumping over to ChatGPT now. I'm going to open up a new browser and I'm going to paste my prompt in here. Oh, let me just switch off browse with Bing. That's not what I want. There we go. I have an Excel file, column, sentence starting in B form. Take a note of how much detail that I've provided. I've told it exactly what column and what cell it's all starting in. I've given it the style that the dates are in, and I've told it exactly what I want it to do. Now it'll respond here. It'll give me a series of code, and I can just copy and paste this code, and I should be able to copy it exactly into where I want to. Go. And we can see that that's worked exactly how we've wanted it to. Now, it's not always going to work. I've practiced this a couple of times and it's given me the wrong thing, but I ask it to build upon the answer that it's got, or I just try again. And I can try a couple of times and it'll give me different functions to use every time. But most of the time I was able to find an answer by trying by just getting it to try different things. Okay, next, navigating and utilizing Excel features. Excel has a wonder of different features that many of which are not utilized as well as they deserve to be. And ChatGPT is a great way to explore that. Conditional formatting, keyboard shortcuts, the various data tools. You can just ask it how to make these things work. So as an example, I'm going to look at conditional formatting. Just going to jump over here and I can just ask it, how do I use conditional formatting in Excel? And now it'll go through and it'll explain how I use conditional formatting. I'm not going to let it run all the way through there, but you get the idea. I'm going to jump back over to here now. Explaining formulae. This is especially useful if you're in any sort of like auditing or supervisor role where you need to check what someone else is doing. If you don't know what a complex formula does, as oftentimes you don't, you can just ask ChatGPT to explain it. Not only is it really good at understanding formula, it's also very good at breaking down complexity into simplicity. So it can take this really complex formula and break it down into all of its like small parts in a way that's quite simple and easy to understand. So for today, we're going to use an example of a tax depreciation formula, which is a complicated, confusing, and intimidating formula that we use in our financial models. Okay, so we're just going to ask it, can you explain to me the following Excel formula? So it prints the code and now just breaks it down step by step. So it's going to break down every little chunk of that and tell you exactly what every little chunk of that is doing. It even sums it up at the end here for you and tells you exactly how the total thing is working. Using dynamic arrays, lambda, and m. So obviously these are areas that are a little bit more niche. We've got dynamic arrays, we've got using lambda formula and using Power Query and naturally M code. I'm not going to go, I haven't got examples for all of these. I'm about to do a Power Query example in a moment, but ChatGPT can sometimes struggle a bit more with these forms of code. And honestly, even other software, mainly just because any more obscure form of code, ChatGPT just isn't going to have as much training data on, and so it just doesn't have as much knowledge on, and that's a natural byproduct of not having that training data. So it will usually require a bit more back and forth, and it may require reminding of some of the rules around coding with it. So we're going to use an example though. We're going to use Power Query to import some Melbourne house price data into Excel and transform it. So I've got a prompt here, obviously, and I've got some Excel, I've got some house price data ready to be imported through Power Query. So I'm going to open up a new blank workbook. Here we go. And I'm going to go into Power Query, get data from file, from text CSV. Here we go. Excel files, mel data, and we've got our data imported. Now we're now going to go into transform data and open up the Power Query editor. Here we go. So we've got, the thing is we don't really want all of these different columns. There's probably only a couple of columns that we actually need for what we're going to do later today. So I'm going to go into advanced editor and we're going to ask ChatGPT to change a bunch of this. Yeah, we're going to jump back over here to ChatGPT and we're going to paste our prompt. Just imported a set of Melbourne house price data. Can you write M code to delete a bunch of columns, remove any rows in land size and price equal to null, and rename one of the codes? Now, I'm going to show you an example of multi-shot prompting. I'm going to show it what the current code is for and this is quite useful for any sort of lambda, M code, dynamic arrays, anything like this. Because by showing it this code, I'm just giving it a little reminder of how M code is structured and what the rules are for M code. So I'm going to paste it in here. There we go, and enter. There we go. I'll even explain it for us, but I'm not too worried about it at the moment. So I'm just going to copy the code and come over here to advanced editor, and I'm just going to paste it in here and replace it. And let's see if this works. Done. There we go. Bedroom is renamed. Some of the columns are removed and a bunch of the blanks are removed. And now we can close and load this. The next thing we're going to look at is creating sample data. So you can actually use ChatGPT to generate sample data sets. And this is very useful, obviously, if you're doing any sort of teaching, if you're doing any sort of testing, modeling, presenting, even just general idea generation. If you're doing any sort of data analysis, you can specify the structure that you want that data in. You can specify any trends that you might want. You can specify flaws. So I'm going to create a sample data set for a kitchen supply company with the headings, as you can see on there. And then maybe we can use that data set later to write some code to analyze, or we can test a machine learning model on it, or anything like that. Yeah, I'm going to come into ChatGPT and I'm going to paste the prompt. And it'll now generate a table for us with some sample data. Now, I assume it's just going to generate a 10 point long page. We could ask it for more if we want. We could ask it for less. We could ask it for 20. We could ask it for 30. Either way works. Now, unfortunately, what it's done here is it's generated in a form that we're not actually able to copy and paste it into Excel. So why don't we come down here and say, can you give us this data in a form we can copy and paste into Excel without the code window. There we go. Now it's giving it to us in a nicer format that we can use. Okay. Finally, the last thing that you can do with ChatGPT before we move on to the paid version is suggest insights from data. One thing that people don't realize they can do, you can copy paste data from Excel straight into ChatGPT. Now, you're not going to be copy and pasting 500 lines of data. That's just not going to work. But what you can do is copy and paste a sample of your data, and you can ask it for advice on how to interact with that data. So I've got this prompt here. I can ask it the prompt, and then I'm going to insert my sample rows in there. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to paste my prompt in here. Now I'm going to jump over to my MEL sample that I've got here. I'm going to copy a bunch of these rows. I'm going to jump back over here, and I'm going to paste these rows of data in here and ask it for 10 insights about this data set that I could pull. Okay, and now it's going to give us a bunch of different insights that we could pull. Now, some of them are fairly straightforward. Average price, median price, total number of houses sold. But if I'd like, I could ask it for some more complicated ideas. Okay, now we're going to look at what you can do with the paid version, with GPT Plus. And so for those of you following along using the free version, this is when you're no longer going to be able to follow along. Obviously, for anyone using the paid version, you're welcome to still follow along all of the examples here. Start off, the biggest difference with one of the biggest differences with the paid version is the use of plugins. So while very good at dealing with broad general topics, ChatGPT does struggle a lot at performing specialized tasks, right? Like math, for example, or even like the law example that I gave you earlier, any sort of scientific studies. Now, there are a range of independently created plugins which give ChatGPT access to different tools or databases. There's a huge range because anyone is allowed to make these plugins. So there are plugins that are made for specific commercial uses, but there are also plugins that are made just because people are passionate about the things that they're making these plugins for. There's plugins for like writing code and data analysis. There's plugins for, I've seen plugins for like flight trackers and things like that. So these are some useful plugins I'm just going to throw up here to suggest. AI PDF allows you to read through PDFs, allows ChatGPT to read through PDFs. Notable is, for me, the most useful thing that I've used. It helps you create Python and SQL notebooks that then ChatGPT can use. Wolfram is a maths plugin that gives you access to the Wolfram database. PMade.ai search, I actually left in this slide before because just recently Bing Browse with Bing has been released, which now allows ChatGPT to browse the web. But before that, that was the main way that you could browse the web using ChatGPT. Makersheet allowed you to generate a CSV file from like data inside ChatGPT. And finally, Scholar AI allows ChatGPT access to a large amount of scientific research. Now, advanced data analysis, a powerful tool for analysts. This is one of, in my opinion, the coolest tools available using the paid version of ChatGPT. It used to be called the code interpreter, but they've changed the name. So anyone who's used it back in the day, the code interpreter is now called advanced data analysis. There's a whole variety of things you can do here. You can upload Excel files, you can clean and edit data, analyze data, create charts and export new Excel files, and create new files from scratch and fill them with data from ChatGPT. It's just very flexible if you're someone who has any job with anything to do with data. So I'm going to show you an example of how easy it is and why this is so interesting to me. So a linear regression is a common form of data analysis that breaks down an output. In our case, we're going to look at Melbourne house prices into a series of linear variables, in our case being bedroom and the amount of bedrooms, distance from the city centre, from the date, etc. Now, it attempts to find the strength of the relationship along with the actual relationship itself between the variables. And to do a regression analysis, you need at least some technical skill and knowledge in either Excel or Python to do it. So we're going to run a multivariable regression on our Melbourne house price data in ChatGPT using the advanced data analysis to just show you how easy it is. So let's start off by copying this prompt, and we'll jump over to ChatGPT. Okay, I'm going to open up a new tab for this one, and I'm just going to hover over GPT-4, and I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to click on Advanced Data Analysis there. And now I'm going to paste my prompt, and now I just need to upload the Excel file that I'm going to use. Yeah, let's upload MYLES sample now. And there we go. And, oh, there we go. And it will be able to actually go into MYLES sample and read the file, and therefore, and after that, do and manipulate that file as it sees fit. I want to show you, as it's going on, what's actually happening behind the scenes. So if we go into show work, what we can see is the Python code that it's actually building. And this is cool because if you're doing if you've got your own Python workbook, you can actually use the code generated in the ChatGPT advanced data analysis, and you can just copy and paste it straight into your Python workbook and get the same thing. Not that there's necessarily much reason to. Most of the things you can actually just do right here. But then look at this. So it does our regression model that we want, and it generates the information that we need. It's got the R squared, it's got the various coefficients. But what I think is extra cool about the advanced data analysis tool is that if I were to do this in Python or in Excel, it would return a very simple table with the coefficients, with the R squared, with the various other bits of the p-values and the various other bits of information that we need to know. However, I need a level of statistical knowledge and understanding to actually know and interpret what all of those mean. Instead, here, ChatGPT is explaining it to us. It's saying this value indicates that 37% of the variability can be explained by the model. This isn't a high R-squared value. So it tells us that it's not a great model. It also tells us what the coefficients are and tells us exactly what that means. So the price increases by 30,000 with each additional year. The additional bedroom is associated with a $233,000 increase in the price. All variables have a p-value of less than 0.05, indicating that they are statistically significant. It even gives us some notes and considerations. And something that we can do here as a follow-up, which is very cool, is we can even ask it how to improve our model. I don't know how to improve a normal regression analysis, but maybe ChatGPT does. So I'm going to ask it, do you have any suggestions for how we can improve our R squared? What you'll see here is it's going to come back naturally with a bunch of suggestions of things we can do. Transformation, interaction terms, polynomial features. I don't actually know what all of these things are. My level of statistics knowledge isn't good enough to know all this, but ChatGPT does. And I can ask it to explain the differences between all of them, and then I can tell it to apply whichever ones that I'd like. It's essentially like having an extra assistant data analyst at your disposal to do whatever you want. Now, I'm not going to go into doing it in front of you right now because we're a bit limited on time, but that's we could have explored that further if we'd like. Now, we're going to move on to another very interesting feature browse with Bing. Now, this is very recent, so I haven't had the amount of time to look into it and understand it in the way that I have with some of these other features. But basically, it allows ChatGPT to browse the internet and pull up up-to-date information. So it allows ChatGPT to essentially become a researcher for you. It can run real-time news analysis. It can fact-check pieces of content that you've got. It can generate, like, it can find data on the internet for to fill out spreadsheets that you might want. It's incredibly useful here. So I'm going to show you an example of that. We're going to jump back over to here, start a new chat, and we're going to hover over there. And instead, we're now going to go to browse with Bing. We're going to ask it, can you, oh, just a moment, there we go. Can you make me a table with all the US states and their median income? And now it'll be actually able to browse the web and try and find that information itself. Previously, a big issue with ChatGPT was all the information that it had ended in 2021. But now, if you're using the paid version, you can use this to actually browse the web and get you up-to-date information. If you're using the free version, don't fear, because what you can do is you can always just use Bing Chat, because Bing Chat is actually powered by ChatGPT and also allows you to search the internet using ChatGPT. It's just that no one really wants to use Bing. Everyone wants to use Google. But yeah, ChatGPT is actually just using Bing, but no one wants to use Bing Chat. Everyone wants to use ChatGPT. Anyway, so this is giving us now this list of US states and their median income. And we can come here, we can take this and we can copy it. And if we want, we can chuck it into another Excel file. We can just copy it and paste it straight in here. And we've got our data pulled from the internet. Nice and easy. The final feature that I want to look at now is Excel Labs, which now to start off, you will need administrative privileges for this, as we are adding in Office add-in. I'll show you how to do that just quickly now. We'll open up a new blank workbook. Going to go to Home up here, and we're going to go add-ins. Now, I already have it added in, so obviously it's showing up there, but for those of you who don't, click add-ins, go get add-ins, and you just search. You just search Excel Labs, and you just click add on Excel Labs. Okay, what you will need for this is you will need to set up an API key. An API key is what allows you to use ChatGPT in other programs. So you're going to sign into openai.com. We're going to jump over here. openai.com. Log in. And instead of going ChatGPT, we'll go API. I'm going to jump over to the top right up here, and we're going to go few API keys here. Now, we already have a few API keys as we've been playing around with it a decent amount, but you're going to create a new secret key, and we're going to go test E1. Now, when you get this key, make sure not to lose it. Copy it and paste it somewhere safe, because once it's gone, you can't get it. Once I've clicked done here, you can't see it again. Now, you can always just create another one, but if you want to keep track of like what each key is being spent on, then you want to have it somewhere so you can use it consistently for one task. So we're going to jump over here again, and we're going to open up Excel Labs. Scroll down to labs.generative AI function. Configure API key, and obviously we've got a key in there already. We're going to put our new key in here, and it's ready to go. Our labs is set up now. So what actually is the generative AI function? It's ChatGPT in Excel. So you can generate and run prompts directly through Excel. You can do all sorts of automated ChatGPT related tasks like sentiment checking or creating a little in Excel assistant or generating bulk descriptions. The syntax is fairly straightforward. It's prompt is the only thing you need, and then it's temperature, which decides on the flexibility of the response, whether it's going to be a consistent response, whether it's going to be a more creative but less consistent response. Max tokens is the maximum return size that is actually allowed, and the model is obviously the model that you're choosing. That can be 3.5 or 4 or one of the other more niche models. And the main difference with the model, other than the actual quality of the answers, is obviously how much each one costs, because each query that you do does cost a very small amount of money. Now, obviously, the cost per query is very small, but obviously if you're running this in bulk, if you're running this on a large set of data, those costs will start to add up. So we're going to do a fairly straightforward example of this. We're going to generate a glossary of accounting descriptions. So I'm just going to jump over here and I'm going to ask it, give me a list of 10 accounting terms with no further information. And so I'm going to take this list, I'm going to copy it, I'm going to jump over back here to this other book, and I'm going to paste it in here. I'm going to try and paste it. There we go. Okay. Now we're going to use this prompt. Explain the following accounting terms simply in less than 50 words. Prompt. Explain in less than 50 words. Open that up here. There we go. And here's going to be where we're going to put our function in. Function is labs.generative.ai C4 E4. Oh, it's C3 B2 now. Equals labs generative AI. We're going to go that. That's our term. Sorry, that's our query. And we're going to anchor that with F4. And then we're going to go and go this one here. And I'm not going to bother filling in any of the other syntax. You can have an explore of that if you like. There we go. Just going to quickly wrap all of this text. There we go, and that gives us a little description. And now if we want, we can drag this down and we can do it for all of these. And obviously, if we had a really big list of terms, or a really big list of anything that we wanted to apply a prompt for, we could then go through and we could apply that prompt to all of them in an automated way, just like this. I wanted to finish off this presentation by talking about what this all actually means for you. Because there's a lot of fear and anxiety around the new developments within artificial intelligence and what that actually means for normal people. Now, the fact is, as I've shown today, artificial intelligence is still unable to do most jobs without supervision. It needs that human hand pushing it in the right direction, checking its outputs for errors and making sure it's understood the prompt. It still struggles to make effective decisions when faced with new and unique challenges, and it still struggles to build upon information to create any sort of new developments or innovations. So there will always be that, at least in the near future, there will always be that requirement for a human hand to guide it and to watch over it. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't significant efficiency gains available in any roles. This is an opportunity because we're in the early stages of adoption, and being able to use artificial intelligence effectively is a way to stand out against your peers. You should be considering it a tool to improve your workflow, to improve your efficiency and improve your effectiveness. The main thing is just not to panic. Artificial intelligence isn't going to take your jobs, but what it is going to do is it's going to provide you a way to differentiate yourself from other people, as it is still in the early stages of adoption. Just do your best to keep up to date with whatever's relevant and whatever's happening within your field, and it provides you the opportunity to really stand out. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. If you've got any feedback, you can leave it using the QR code and we'd love to hear it. If you've got any questions, you're welcome to either email me at my email on the left there or message me on LinkedIn. I'm going to hand it over now to Live Miles, who's going to answer any questions that you've got about the presentation.
Okay, hello everyone. I hope you've all enjoyed that presentation. Yeah, so I can see we've got a couple of questions in the chat, so I'm just going to run through them and I'm going to answer them to the best of my ability. Just remember, caveat on all of this, ChatGPT and artificial intelligence is a very quickly and rapidly changing area. So anything that I might say here could be out of date very quickly. And in fact, I had to last minute change a few of the slides in that presentation because of just new updates that came out and invalidated all of the previous information. So the first question is from ChatGPT: how do you know if the answers from me are correct? And that's a good question. You don't, you just have to check it yourself. Now, on the main thing for saving time is you need to know how complex your question actually is. Because if your question's fairly simple, a lot of the time you can take the answers from ChatGPT at face value. However, if you're asking it a question that's more difficult, that's more complicated, or in a fairly niche area, you may need to double check that. And oftentimes you'll need to work with ChatGPT to actually build answers that are adequate, depending on what question you've asked. So oftentimes some back and forth can be really important, but overall just that supervision and that checking is really important. The second question from Hu Li: can ChatGPT assist in creating automated data entry forms in Excel? And if so, how? So there's two sides to this. So first of all, ChatGPT can pretty much assist with anything as far as it goes to explaining things and actually learning how to use them. So for data entry forms, it can absolutely assist you because it can help explain how to use them, how to build them, and if you're doing something with them, it can help provide advice in doing that. However, as far as I'm aware, there's no way to actually directly have ChatGPT interact with data entry forms. So if that's your question, then currently there's no way that, as I'm aware, for direct interaction between the two. The next question, also from Hu Li: is there a community or forum for Excel users to share their experiences and knowledge about ChatGPT? Yeah, so the best thing, probably the best place for this is just the OpenAI website. They've got a page at community.openai.com where the ChatGPT community shares information. They've got various specific forums, one of which I'm sure is about Excel, where Excel users, I'm sure, can come in and they can share their thoughts and share their problems and whatnot. From Hu Li again: what are best practices for using ChatGPT to improve data cleansing and preparation in Excel? So for the most part, this is just the things that I stated earlier in the presentation. So the first thing is break down all of your tasks into simple steps. So instead of having it try and do all of the tasks that you want it to do like in one go, instead break it up into various steps, because it makes it easier for it to process and it makes it easier to come up with good results for you. The second thing is, again, similarly, I'm going to be stressing a lot of the same things because there's just a few really key things when it comes to using ChatGPT. Check all of the outputs and make sure that they're actually doing what you want them to do, because obviously ChatGPT is prone to having issues with regards to its output and making mistakes. And just having a human there just to make sure that it's actually doing what it's supposed to is really important. Like I found it'll be right probably like 80 to 90% of the time, depending on if you're doing like a moderately complex task, but nothing too crazy. But that 10%, you just have to be there ready to intercept if it has issues. Yeah, those are probably the two main best practices. Last question, from Tal: is there a copyright issue when I use AI work from ChatGPT? So this is actually a very complicated question. The answer is it depends. This is an area that hasn't actually been explored very heavily in law, and there hasn't been any like legislation or decisions made, major decisions made so far. So it's actually a little bit cloudy. Now, the way AI generated content, there's a classification for copyright. It needs independent intellectual effort. So whether AI generated content qualifies as that is actually is a debated topic. Is currently a debated topic. So there's no straightforward answer for that. The easiest way to avoid any issues with copyright is to just you're totally welcome to use AI generated content and then edit it yourself, and that will bypass most of the any potential issues with the copyright, because it has that independent intellectual effort. However, as far as just taking AI generated content and distributing it or using it, it does potentially run into some issues with regards to whether or not you can copyright it. So yeah, it's best to just add something yourself to make it independent. And on the other, there's another side of this that's opened up as well, which is there's actually some controversy within the field about whether AI generated content is actually an infringement of copyright, because it's trained on vast amounts of data, whether that be text data for ChatGPT or image data for many various image AI services, much of which is copyrighted content, and much of which it possibly doesn't have the rights to use. And so there is actually discussion, and the likelihood is that it's not going to lead to much, but there is discussion as to the extent of which that might become an issue with the copywriting of AI generated content.